Ramadan in space sparks discussion among scholars on prayer and fasting. 12,000 Rohingyas homeless again as fire guts refugee camp. WHO urges countries to reveal intelligence on COVID-19 origins. Far-right Australian Islamophobe becomes a Muslim. White supremacists deface Montana's sacred native site. U.S. Employment Commission files suit against ExxonMobil. Al-Badry documents Arab American and Muslim American life. From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight, Muslim astronaut Sultan Al-Nayadi will be calling the International Space Station home for the next 6 months, which means that he will be spending Ramadan and Eid in space. That is leading to some questions about how he will offer the 5 daily prayers and fast from dawn to sunset in the month of Ramadan, which is expected to start on March 22nd. The ISS orbits Earth 16 times in 24 hours, and astronauts aboard witness 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets in a single Earth day. So how can one fast in space? Dr. Ismail Mufti Menk, a renowned Zimbabwean Islamic scholar, said fasting is not mandatory as the astronaut is traveling. The astronaut can catch up on his fasting after reaching Earth, Dr. Menk says. But if he insists, the scholar explained that if a person is in a time zone with no sunset or sunrise in 24 hours, we do something known as hisab, which means to calculate. He explained that this calculated fast would last 12 hours, with the first hour being taken as the beginning and the end of the 12 hours being taken as iftar, or fast breaking time, and mahar prayer time. As for the direction to face while offering the 5 daily prayers, Dr. Menk said that the astronaut must face towards the Earth. But he said that if they cannot due to lack of gravity, that they will be excused from facing the Earth's direction and the astronaut's prayers will be valid. Islam is simple, he emphasized. Thousands of temporary shelters were burnt in a fire that broke out Sunday at a Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh, officials say. The fire hit Camp 11 in Cox's Bazar. The border district hosts more than 1 million Rohingya Muslim refugees who fled Burma's military crackdown in 2017. The armed police battalion charged with maintaining law and order in the refugee camps said nearly 2,000 tents were gutted and 12,000 Rohingya left homeless. There were no casualties and the cause of the blaze is still unclear, police say, adding that it was likely the result of gas cylinders used for cooking. The fire spread quickly as most of the homes were made of bamboo and tarpaulin. The refugees will be shifted to different camp-based learning centers and shelters. Donor agencies, including the UNHCR and World Food Program, will provide them with food and other supports. Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said Saturday his comment to wipe out the Palestinian town of Huwara was a slip of the tongue, according to media reports. The Times of Israel reported that Smotrich told local media his word choice was wrong, but the intention was very clear. Earlier this week, the U.S. slammed Smotrich's remarks as irresponsible, repugnant, and disgusting. State Department spokesman Ned Price said just as we condemn Palestinian incitement to violence, we condemn those provocative remarks that also amount to incitement to violence. Smotrich's comment came after violent Israeli raids that killed 11 Palestinians in the city of Nablus at the end of February. Days later, these led to the killing of an Israeli soldier and his brother in the Palestinian village of Huwara, which Israeli settlers retaliated for by burning Palestinian homes and cars. The violence led to the death of 1 Palestinian man and left dozens injured. The World Health Organization is urging all countries to reveal just what they know about the origins of COVID-19. Its Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said on Friday that any country with information about the origins of the pandemic must share it with the WHO and the international scientific community. This call comes after claims by the United States that the virus likely was leaked from a Chinese laboratory. The accusation has been furiously denied by Beijing. FBI Director Christopher Wray told Fox News that his agency had assessed the source of the COVID-19 pandemic. He said that it was most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan, the Chinese city that hosts a virus research laboratory. Wuhan was also the site of the first COVID-19 infections in late 2019. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said last week Beijing had been transparent in the search for the origin of the virus. She said the U.S. should look to its own biological laboratories scattered across the world when searching for the virus's source. One of Australia's most notorious Islamophobes and the head of the far-right group United Patriots Front has converted to Islam. Sherman Burgess became popular during the 2010s. This was for his involvement in far-right nationalist groups as well as his role in anti-Islam protests in 2015. Those centered on opposing the construction of a mosque in the city of Bendigo. On his social media page titled The Great Aussie Patriot, Burgess would share racist, inflammatory content to tens of thousands of followers. But now Burgess confirmed to Australian media outlet Crikey that he and another former anti-Islamic activist had converted to Islam and had been welcomed by his local mosque. He said the Muslim community is so kind and amazing. If you need help, they are there. Burgess said that one of the reasons he had changed was after meeting with Muslim Freedom Movement leader Yusra Rose, who he said gave him a clearer outlook towards Islam. Iraqi officials told Middle East Eye that the country has worsened its financial crisis and contributed to its currency depreciating by paying its debts to Iran in Iraqi dinars. Iraq's currency has been struggling for months against the dollar. This was after new restrictions were imposed by the U.S. Federal Reserve on how the country's central bank trades the dollars it receives from oil sales. The crisis has led to the government being unable to pay the salaries of millions of public servants. It has also failed to pay pensions and payments to other beneficiaries of social welfare programs. Iraq has been one of the largest importers of Iranian goods over the last 20 years. This includes gas, electricity, food, and construction materials. The official trade exchange between the countries amounts to approximately $14 billion. A story on white supremacists defacing a sacred Montana native site comes with details after the break, so stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back. A white nationalist group is taking credit for etching Nazi symbols on an outdoor recreational area in Montana managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The federal agency is investigating graffiti carved into the Four Dances area, which is named after the Native American spiritual and military leader for the Upsaluk or Crow people. It is located about 3 miles south of the city of Billings. The Big Sky Active Club posted on its Gap social media account that they went on a hike and etched our message in stone, tribe up or die. The club is linked to white supremacists. The carvings showed a swastika with the number 1488. The 14 refers to the 14-word slogan, "We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children." The 88 is a reference to the Hail Hitler chant used by Nazis and other hate groups, according to the Anti-Defamation League. A second set of carvings by the club was the SS lightning bolts. These are a common white supremacist or neo-Nazi symbol derived from Nazi Germany. A third carving showed a swastika with the message, "We are everywhere." The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission on Thursday filed a lawsuit in Louisiana against ExxonMobil. This was for unlawful employment practices based on racial discrimination. Filed in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Louisiana, it alleges ExxonMobil violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The lawsuit claims the corporation failed to take necessary steps to fix and stop racial discrimination at its chemical plant and oil refinery in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The EEOC is seeking relief for former ExxonMobil employee Milford McGee under Title VII. It is seeking the court to order ExxonMobil to provide McGee with compensation for injuries that he faced resulting from the discrimination. The complaint alleges that between April 2016 and December 2020, at least 5 hangman's nooses were found at the Baton Rouge complex. The fourth was found by McGee. ExxonMobil reportedly investigated the occurrence and banned 2 contractors from the site. But the company did not take remedial measures to mitigate racial discrimination in the workplace, such as instituting new policies or training. Minnesota legislators hope to establish the nation's first organization to investigate the disappearances of a disproportionately high number of Black women and girls. House Bill HF 55 would create the Office of Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls. The measure was approved by the Minnesota House on February 20th by a 110-19 majority. The initiative is expected to cost about $2.5 million and would examine the circumstances of missing persons and cold cases, Yahoo News reported. The bill's author, Representative Ruth Richardson of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, said it is a high priority in the governor's budget and expressed optimism that it would pass this year. Black women make up only 13% of the female population in the U.S., but studies have shown that they account for 35% of the nation's missing women. Nearly 100,000 of the 250,000 women who went missing during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 were women of color. U.S. conservatives opened their annual conference on Thursday with multiple culture war grievances that frame the government as the biggest threat to the American way of life. The Conservative Political Action Conference, or CPAC, heard discussion of the opioid epidemic, the rising threat from China, and the immigration crisis. Debate was also focused on issues such as transgender athletes, what they called woke education, and perceived attacks on religious liberty. An array of conservative firebrands aimed broadsides at fellow Americans perceived as too progressive. The event, which wrapped up on Sunday, featured 3 days of speeches from right-wing A-listers. That included Brazil's recently defeated leader, Jair Bolsonaro. Thousands of Republicans gathered at Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in Maryland to vet hopefuls considering challenges to frontrunner Donald Trump for the 2024 presidential nomination. The 76-year-old's persistent polling strength has confounded critics. Trump's polling towers over potential rivals like former Vice President Mike Pence and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Wissam Al-Badry and his family left their homeland of Iraq during the Gulf War, which began when he was 7 years old. In 1991, the family arrived at a refugee camp in Saudi Arabia. That's where Al-Badry got his first camera, a Pentax K1000, and realized that it was a tool that could be used to tell his story. The Al-Badrys eventually relocated to Lincoln, Nebraska in 1994. Growing up, Al-Badry became aware of racism in American society as teenagers would mock his mother's hijab. He realized many Americans had been conditioned to see Arabs and Muslims as strange, angry, or violent. Today, Al-Badry is an investigative journalist and interdisciplinary artist working with themes related to identity, labor, migration, Islamophobia, war, and technology. His work focuses on the Middle East and the North of African diaspora, specifically how representatives of the region's popular culture appear in Western media. Al-Badry's photo series, From Which I Came, features his family and friends. The people in these photos are rarely smiling. Al-Badry seeks to present them as resilient and dignified. He wants his subjects to see themselves without imposed stereotypes. And that's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.